afternoon from the KUOW newsroom. This is Seattle Now. I'm your host, Paige Browning, with today's top stories. It's Thursday, June 4th. No plea today from Christopher Leahy. The 31-year-old Bellevue man has been charged with first-degree murder in the death of UW student Juniper Blessing. In an arraignment hearing today, Leahy did not attend but had lawyers in his place. A judge ordered Leahy to be sent to Western State Hospital for 15 days, where he'll undergo a competency evaluation. Meanwhile, a memorial for Blessing on the UW Seattle campus is now in place at Mary Gates Hall through September. How's Seattle Mayor Katie Wilson doing on her plan for housing? She says she's pressing ahead with her ambitious plan to create 1,000 new emergency shelter beds during her first year in office. But last night at a public forum, she said she will not make her goal of opening 500 shelter beds before World Cup matches begin later this month.
This is not something where we're like, okay, we're trying to get 500 or 1,000. Okay, we got some, we didn't quite make it. Okay, we all go home, right? This is an ongoing effort throughout this 4-year term.
Wilson campaigned on aggressive shelter bed expansion last year. Planned sites for new tiny home villages are still in the works. Wilson said her administration would open its first pallet shelter village in Interbay this weekend. 50 of those single adult units should be move-in ready within weeks. And while we're talking about Wilson, she is apparently no longer boycotting Starbucks. Scott Greenstone has more.
Wilson turned heads last year when she said, "I'm not buying Starbucks and you shouldn't either," at a worker rally. Critics drew a connection a few months later when Starbucks announced a new corporate office in Nashville and hundreds of layoffs in Seattle. On Wednesday night at a forum, a reporter asked if Wilson still supports boycotting Starbucks.
I had the pleasure of visiting the Pike Place Market Starbucks a little while ago, and I ordered I think it was a blueberry muffin latte. That was like a staff creation. So that's I guess I broke my boycott.
Okay.
That's a Pike Place Starbucks exclusive created by an employee there. Wilson said she went to talk to the workers who were trying to organize a union. But Wilson also downplayed the divide between her and big business. She pointed out Starbucks is donating to help open tiny house villages in Seattle this summer. Scott Greenstone, KUOW News.
With the World Cup about a week away, hotel workers near Lumen Field plan to vote tomorrow on a possible strike. Gustavo Segrero reports.
Some hotel workers in downtown Seattle are on edge with plans for ICE's presence to help with security during the World Cup. At the Embassy Suites at Pioneer Square, workers are bringing this broader issue about immigration enforcement to their contract negotiations. Stefan Moritz is with the union representing the workers. They want management to tell them if ICE or DHS agents are on hotel property.
It's the responsibility of the community and of employers to keep folks as safe as possible and stand with them as they're struggling with the government crackdown on immigrants right now.
The union also wants more healthcare coverage, raises, and a return to pre-pandemic staffing levels. Hilton, the hotel's parent company, has not responded to requests for comment. During Seattle's World Cup, Seattle officials say federal partners have told them there are no planned civil enforcement operations. Gustavo Segrero, KUOW News.
A brand new day, a brand new funding risk for homeless services. New limits on federal grants could threaten $26 million in Seattle and King County homelessness dollars. The Department of Housing and Urban Development announced the changes this week. They're intended to pull back from the so-called Housing First model, where service providers focus on getting people into permanent shelter as a first step toward broader recovery. Instead, the administration's emphasizing temporary transitional housing and short-term services for addiction and mental illness. A spokesperson for King County Executive Gurmai Zahalai says if it happens, it'd have devastating impacts in communities. In this next story, the city of Seattle will be doling out money to settle a police lawsuit. The city's reached a $2.6 million settlement with 4 female police officers who complained of gender discrimination and sexual harassment. An attorney for the plaintiffs says 3 of them are still with SPD. Through his attorney, former Chief Adrian Diaz told KUOW TV that the claims were false. In some brighter news today, the University of Washington Medical School is celebrating its largest private donation in support of student scholarships. The $25 million gift comes from the William and Carolyn Franke family. It'll offer tuition assistance to students who plan to serve as physicians in rural and indigenous communities. The federal government's new medical student loan limit is $200,000, but medical school dean Dr. Tim Dellett says the average debt is $20,000 more than that.
That math doesn't work. And this is why I truly feel this is so transformational. We have to decrease that financial burden so that our students can pursue their dreams and not their debt.
The scholarship assistance will begin this year. The donation will assist about 30 future physicians each year and will pay for half their tuition. Let the sound of pickleball flood your ears. We've got sports news. The city of Seattle's put their pickleball plan on hold, one that could have eliminated nearly 40% of the city's public courts. The plan met fierce opposition from pickleball players when it was announced back in April. The Parks Department's now scheduling 4 more public meetings about the plan. The Seattle Times reports the plan had called for reverting the courts back to tennis only as early as this month. And the Seattle Torrent are at risk of losing their captain, Hillary Knight. The team chose not to protect Knight as the PWHL continues its expansion process. That means the celebrated forward could possibly be signed by another team. Speaking at a news conference today, Torrent General Manager Megan Turner didn't specify why the team chose not to protect Knight, but praised Knight for handling it well.
You know, Hillary is a pro in all respects, and that was a very professional conversation, and have a ton of respect for her as a player and a person and a leader.
Knight also captained Team USA to an Olympic gold medal this year. She previously has said she hopes to stay with the Torrent. This is all happening as the PWHL is adding 4 new teams to the current 8-team league. Now, our feature story today. Questions are swirling after last week's tank implosion at the Nippon Dynawave packaging facility in Longview. 11 men died at the pulp and paper mill in what's being called the deadliest workplace incident in Washington state in nearly a century. Oregon Public Broadcasting's Lauren Dake's been covering the aftermath and talked with KUOW's Kim Malcolm.
Lauren, welcome.
Thank you.
So the shock of this is settling in, and people want answers. Your OPB team has been researching similar incidents. What are experts telling you about what could have happened here?
We spoke to several former Chemical Safety Board members and engineers, professors, and the commonality that really emerged was that they think what caused this was likely a complex mix of factors that really contributed to this tragedy. So several people said it could have been an issue with the vents. Maybe that combined with some issues with the actual tank itself, corrosion or cracks. And then on top of it all, you are dealing with this very dangerous toxic chemical. And then when you take any failure, or perhaps several failures happening in concert, well, then we see that it can be quite deadly.
The pictures of the site, Lauren, they show the side of this huge tank crumpled in on itself. Tell us what happens in an implosion.
Well, one person we spoke with, his name is Stephen Chemotek, and he is a professor of chemical engineering at Worcester Polytechnic Institute. And he said the photos, the drone footage, do seem to suggest that the tank collapsed inward, and that to him seemed to suggest a dramatic change in pressure. He said maybe there was a relief valve on top of this massive tank that could have been plugged and then caused it to collapse. This is how he put it in his own words.
Picture a plastic water bottle, those real thin-walled plastic water bottles, and you put your mouth over it and start drinking, but you have a good seal on that opening. What I believe could well have happened in this case is they were pulling out, but there was no way for air or something else to backfill that volume as they were sucking material out of it. And so it collapsed, just like that water bottle.
And he said, unlike industrial tank explosions, which he said are actually more common, he could count on one hand the number of tank implosions that he's seen in nearly 40 years of doing this.
Wow, really, really unusual. You know, in the days since this happened, we've learned that these kinds of facilities are largely self-regulated in Washington. There's no state agency, apparently, that's responsible for inspecting these kinds of tanks. How typical is that?
Right. So what we learned during this reporting process was a lot of the routine inspections of the tanks, like you said, are done by the company themselves. They do have to file their plans with the Department of Ecology, but they are the ones conducting routine testing of the systems. Their plan says that their tanks that store these chemicals are scheduled for visual external inspections every year, and internal inspections of these tanks are scheduled when deemed appropriate.
Your team found that the process that they used at the Longview plant is known as craft pulping, and that involves a substance called white liquor. What have you learned about it and how it was used?
The process of craft pulping is basically disintegrating wood so that it evolves into this strong cellulose material that then can be used to make paper or containers like milk cartons. One person I spoke with described it sort of similar to pressure cooking. You put the wood in the pressure cooker, you put in a bunch of chemicals, which is this white liquor, which is very corrosive, a caustic chemical that you do not want to interact with because it is dangerous.
Lauren, for people tracking this story, what's happening next?
Well, there's several different investigations happening. They're all expected to take some time. I think something that is worth noting is that this Chemical Safety Board, this federal nonpartisan board that really aims to investigate the root causes of these incidents, their budget is up in the air. The President Donald Trump's proposed budget calls for cutting their budget, which would mean that their work could not be completed.
OPB's Lauren Dake talking with KUOW's Kim Malcolm. And a quick footnote, after our interview with Lauren, we learned that a congressional committee has approved a plan to fully fund the U.S. Chemical Safety Board, but the full Congress still needs to sign off on the funding. Next time on Seattle Now, it's Casual Friday. Fans of Federal Way's Wild Waves Water Park got bad news this week. After this summer's final season, the park is coming down in favor of a giant warehouse.
I would pull over to go ride a roller coaster last summer. This is real. This is the whimsy people don't understand can be part of their lives, and we're not going to have it anymore. This is what happens when you don't whimsy max, folks.
Hear that and more tomorrow morning. We're just a couple days away now from Seattle Now's live taping at the Cascade PBS Ideas Festival. Trish will talk to King County Executive Gurmai Zahalai live on stage. Check it out. Come see us there. Get your tickets at cascadepbs.org/Ideas Festival or click the link in the show notes. And we still have the discount code. Just enter promo code Seattle Now for 20% off. That's all for today from the KUOW Newsroom in Seattle. Our producer is Andy Hurst, and I'm Paige Browning. The interview in today's episode was produced by John O'Brien. Seattle Now and KUOW are members of the NPR network. See you later.